article. And view. So we should review what we did in a summary slide. So I'm going to share the what do you call it? The file. Sorry, the handout. And handout, yes. So can everyone see this? Can everyone see summary of chapter 2?
I can see, yes, Prabhuji.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So what we talked about just in the summary form is that sadhana bhakti has two components, Vaidhi bhakti and Raganuga bhakti. Vaidhi bhakti is executed by our senses under the rules and regulations. Somebody needs to turn your yourself on mute, please. Okay, thank you. But the idea of Vaidhi bhakti is to ultimately achieve love of Krishna. And the other thing is, love of Krishna is not something new to us. We already have it. So what we're trying to do is revive what's been extinguished, sort of. Also, under Vaidhi bhakti, it's not spontaneous in that it's not coming from within, but we need an external incentive like Shastra, Guru, or fear of getting stuck in the material world, etc., etc. Whereas Raganuga bhakti is more spontaneous. It comes out of natural love for Krishna and does not need any external incentives to do that. Then we talked about devotional service begins with the causeless mercy of a devotee or the Lord. And we made a statement, bhakti causes bhakti, not service. So by any amount of service, you can't get bhakti unless it's bhakti service you're doing. Also, a bhakta causes bhakti, so we should serve the bhaktas. We also said attraction to Krishna is the only qualification for devotional service, but there's no qualification required for getting mercy of a devotee. And the whole idea of sadhana bhakti is to fix our mind on Krishna. And with the best process for that is chanting the holy name. Then we chanted one particular verse, and we said this is the most important rule of all the rules, which is smartavya satatam Vishnu, vismartavyo na jatichit, sarve vid nishedasya, ityorev kinkara. Basically meaning that all the rules are servant of this rule. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And Varnashram Dharma may be good, but if you follow Varnashram Dharma but don't remember Krishna, then it's just a waste because you don't get anything. If anything you do does not result in love of Krishna, then it's basically useless. Okay. We also talked about how most people in the world are insane because they work very hard just to become more entangled in the material world. And whatever we do, we should be for the purpose of satisfying Krishna. So that's basically a one-page summary of the class last week. Now I'm going to ask if there are any questions or comments from
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Sonam, how are you?
Good, Prabhuji. Thank you. Prabhuji, I understood that line, bhakti causes bhakti, but uske aage jo hai not service, does it include the service to the Vaishnavas?
No, so service to the Vaishnavas is bhakti.
Is bhakti, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
any other kind of service that we do is outside of Navvidha bhakti.
Any example, Prabhuji?
Yeah, sure. So for example, you go and buy something for somebody, but it's not a devotee. Then it's a service, but it's not a bhakti service. You help somebody out get a job, service, but it's not bhakti service. So therefore, it doesn't result in bhakti. Okay.
So kind of material favors that we do to
Yeah,
others.
anything that's non-devotional doesn't
Okay.
result.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. Anybody else? Okay, if not, then we'll start with the chapter 3. And excuse me. So we'll try and finish chapter 3 today. But that doesn't mean you don't ask any questions. If you have any questions, just stop me and we'll go through that. So again, still kind of what's the word? Revising what we did. So in the introduction, we defined pure devotional service. In chapter 1, we defined the 6 characteristics of the pure devotional service. Second chapter, which was last week, we described what sadhana bhakti is. Okay. Now, third chapter will describe the basic qualification for practicing devotional service. So what are the basic qualifications for practicing devotional service? Okay. We talked about earlier also that devotional service is causeless. What that means is that there is no prerequisite for taking up the practice of sadhana bhakti. In the beginning, you don't even need knowledge or renunciation or detachment. Yeah, even renunciation is not a prerequisite, knowledge is not a prerequisite, contrary to what people think, that renunciation or detachment is a prerequisite for starting a spiritual life. And if you don't have knowledge, then how do you do it? But neither is a prerequisite for devotional service. In fact, sometimes renunciation or too much knowledge can be an impediment to bhakti. If somebody is too detached from emotional activities, sensual activities, then he will not be inclined to do a devotional service, because devotional service entails active use of senses and emotions. And to detach yourself from both senses and emotions, how will you perform devotional service? Right? And I'll give an example, a real life example. This happened maybe about 15 years ago, but I still remember as if it happened yesterday. And that is in the temple after, like during the arati, after they have offered flowers, they give flower out to other people. And so I used to take one and take it to Srila Prabhupada to smell, and then give it to everyone to smell. And I took it to one girl, young girl, maybe 20 years old, for the smell. She said, no. I was shocked. I said, why not? She said, no, that is sense gratification. I don't want to smell anything. Well, she missed the whole point. Smelling the flower is receiving mercy from the Lord. It's not a material activity. So this is called false renunciation. It's not necessary to do that. Okay. Also, we talked about the basic qualification being that attraction to Krishna or to service of Krishna is the only qualification for devotional service, right? Hopefully you remember that from last week. And we also talked about this. How does one get this attraction? By the mercy of pure devotee. Okay, so I hope you remember all that from last week. If not, stop me and ask me a question or repeat something. Okay, all right. Let's get started with chapter 3 now. Would somebody like to read the first paragraph?
Can I do it, Prabhuji?
Go ahead, please.
Eligibility of the candidate for accepting devotional service on account of his association with Mahatmas or great soul, 100% of the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Shri Krishna, but at the same time, one may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment, and cannot be prepared for the undergo the different types of renunciation. Such a person, if he is unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service.
Right. So actually, if we just read the first line of the next paragraph, says, this attraction for Krishna consciousness in association with pure devotees is the sign of great fortune. So I want to repeat that. This attraction for Krishna consciousness in association with pure devotees is the sign of great fortune. It is confirmed by Lord Chaitanya that only the fortunate persons, by the mercy of both a bona fide spiritual master and Krishna, will get the seed of devotional service. That should sound very familiar to those of you who may have read Chaitanya Charitamrita, which says, Brahmanda Brahmate Kono Bhagwan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. So that's basically what's being said here. And actually in the second part of the same paragraph, Rupa Goswami is quoting Lord Krishna's statement to Uddhava from 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse 8. He says, I'm reading from the second paragraph now, almost halfway through. He says, my dear Uddhava, only by exceptional fortune does someone become attracted to me. Did you find it? Did everyone find that line?
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Okay, good.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. And even if one is not completely detached from fruitive activities or is not completely attached to devotional service, such a service is quickly effective. So what Krishna is really saying here is that a person who still has some attachment to such gratification, but who somehow or the other, by exceptional good fortune, gets the association of pure devotees. By the way, would somebody like to define to me what does association of pure devotees mean in practical terms?
Prabhuji,
Taking shelter of Guru Maharaj and getting his mercy.
Okay, it's more than that.
Following
what
their
we-
instructions.
do we,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Sonam. What did you say?
Following their instructions.
Following the instructions, absolutely. Anything else?
Prabhuji, what we are doing right now,
What is
Yeah.
that?
we are taking lectures even though we're not together. We are still connecting with pure devotees. Everybody has the same motive to learn about Krishna. This is called practical bhakti.
Okay, all right. So yeah, association means accepting instructions or serving them faithfully by hearing their message and then accepting it. Okay, so that's what association means. Association doesn't mean you sit beside them and look pretty. Okay, so those who somehow or the other, by exceptional good fortune, get the association of pure devotees, they can begin practicing devotional service if they simply have some attraction to devotional service. And what Krishna is saying in the last sentence is that such a person can progress very quickly and become a good candidate for going back home, back to God. Okay, clear? Now, in the next few paragraphs, Rupa Goswami describes 3 grades of devotees. Okay. Again, I'm going to remind you that impetus for Vaidhi Bhakti is scriptural injunction. So therefore, one's knowledge of scriptures and faith in the scriptures is a major consideration in determining one's eligibility to advance. So the degree of faith you have and degree of knowledge we have in the scriptures determines how fast or at what speed are we going to advance. Okay. Now, I want to make sure everybody has the same definition of faith. Here, what I'm saying by what I mean by faith is the conviction that the goal of life is to please Krishna and to abandon all other desires. You may recall from second week, it says Anya Bhlashta Shunyam, right? No other desire except to please Krishna. That's my only goal of life. That's what faith means. Okay, so based on the depth of their faith in the scriptures and the knowledge in the scripture of the scriptures, we categorize devotees in 3 categories: Uttamadhikari, Madhyamuddhikari, and Kanishthadhikari. And I'm going to share the screen and show you some details. Okay, so hold on. Can everyone see this? Okay, so first column is the category, Uttam, Madhyam and Kanishth. Second column, faith in the scripture. And third column, knowledge of the scripture. So the definition of Untitled is that the very strong, unflinching faith in the scriptures. And they're convinced about the validity of the scriptures, the message of the scriptures, and that the ultimate goal of devotional service is to develop transcendental love for Krishna, and that Krishna is the only object of worship and love. So not only they are convinced, but with their arguments, based on their knowledge of the scriptures, they can convince anyone that Krishna is the only object of worship. What we try to do, the ultimate goal of life is to develop love of Krishna. Okay. Now, obviously, when somebody has that kind of faith, they will strictly follow the rules and regulations under a bona fide spiritual master and obey all the instructions of the spiritual master. Okay. But the faith is not blind. Faith is based on understanding the reasons and arguments of the scriptures. And these guys are not interested in, dry speculation, wasting time and all that. Not interested at all. And they have, their devotional service basically has matured. It's not a neophyte, which we'll talk about later on when we talk about Kanishth Adhikari. So that's the faith of an Uttam Bhakta. Any questions on that before I move to the second line? Third column rather, knowledge. So this is clear? Okay. Then under knowledge, basically they understand the scriptures so well that they can argue with anybody and defeat their arguments. Actually, in Bhagavatam, the definition of guru is given, Shabde Parichat Nishnatam. Shabde Parichat Nishnatam, Vishnu's, I'm sorry, I can't remember the last one, but basically means they're bathed in the scriptures. They know it so well. Okay, they're expert in the scriptures. And they're also expert in putting forward their arguments in terms of the instructions or injunctions of the scriptures. Because a lot of people understand it, can't explain it, can't argue. But these people can actually explain and argue. They can very nicely present all the conclusions of the scriptures. They are fully trained preachers and they can become spiritual masters. However, even as a spiritual master, they never deviate from the principles of higher authority. They are in the disciplic succession, so they have their acharyas, they follow. Okay, any questions or comments on that? Is the definition clear? Okay, then the second category is Madhyamuddhikari, second class devotee. First class devotee we talked about, second class devotee, Madhyamuddhikari. Their faith is also very strong. They are also very convinced. They have firm faith in the devotional service. And they know it's only for Krishna. They know all that. They understand Krishna is the only object of worship. So in that sense, there may be difference of degree, but same faith as Uttamadhikari. But the difference comes in knowledge. The knowledge is very good, but they're not very expert in arguing on the strength of the revealed scriptures. So when somebody has opposing opinion, they have difficulty convincing. But regardless, whether they can convince anybody else or not, their faith doesn't change. They remain fully convinced that Krishna is Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Krishna is all in all. So their faith in Krishna, their love for Krishna, their desire to serve Krishna doesn't change, whether they are able to convince somebody else or not. And that's the main difference between Uttamadhikari and Madhyamuddhikari. And then you have the beginners, Neophyte Devotees, Kanishth Adhikari. They have faith. It's not that they don't have faith, but it's weak. it can be easily swayed. You give them some nice logic, some nice arguments, they say, oh yeah, maybe you're right. And they're willing to give up their faith. So clearly out of the three, they are the least qualified. Okay. Their knowledge is also weak, and they cannot offer too many arguments to defeat the opposing opinions. Okay. Now, they have weak faith. It doesn't mean they don't have faith. So I want to make sure there's nobody confused that they don't have faith. They have faith. It's just weak. They're not able to argue, so it can be swayed. Okay. Any questions or comments? Is this clear?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I have a quick question. So Uttmadhikari and pure devotee, is there any differentiation, or pure devotee is beyond Uttmadhikari?
No. So no. Uttmadhikari is pure devotee.
Okay.
Yeah, even Madhyamuddhikari may be pure devotee.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Prabhu, so a pure devotee doesn't necessarily need to be a sannyasi.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. Remember, almost all the associates of Lord Chaitanya were pure devotees, but they were grihasthas. Right? So that doesn't go together. So pure devotee may or may not be sannyasi, and a sannyasi may or may not be pure devotee. So there's no correlation. Okay.
So Prabhu, if a sannyasi is not a pure devotee, so then how does he become a sannyasi?
Prabhu, you are from India. You must have met millions of sannyasis who are not even devotees. Forget about pure devotees. They're just frauds.
Okay.
Right?
So they
just wear saffron.
Okay.
To fool people. And so many have been caught, we know the stories. So don't confuse regular sannyasi with ISKCON sannyasis. Okay, ISKCON sannyasis are all devotees.
Right.
Outside, they may or may not be. I'm not saying no one is, but
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Somebody else
Hare
was trying to ask
Krishna,
question.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, Prabhu, do you have any example for Madhyamuddhikari?
Actually, almost all preachers are Madhyamuddhikaris. Even it is Prabhupada said that even the Uttamadhikaris like Srila Prabhupada sometimes deliberately come down to Madhyamuddhikari level so they can preach. So why? Because there's so many compromises you have to make as a preacher. You have to associate with non-devotees, you have to associate with people who argue, you have to sometimes eat at people's houses where they may not be initiated, and so on and so forth. Right? So that's one example.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Anyone else?
Is there, sorry if I'm jumping ahead, I know that there's a difference between devotees. I think it's the Uttam and the Madhyam. The Uttamadhikari, if I'm not mistaken, does not distinguish between devotees and non-devotees.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was another way that Prabhupada sort of came down to the Madhyam level because he had to discriminate. Did I make that up?
No, you didn't. So thank you, Rashi. There are many ways the distinction between Uttam, Madhyam, and Kanishta has been made. So for example, one that Radha Bhakti was talking about says that a Kanishta Adhikari recognizes the deity in the temple, but doesn't care about devotees or anybody else. So his behavior, etc., may not be good. A Madhyamuddhikari not only recognizes the deity in the temple, but also understands that the devotees is able to discriminate between devotees and non-devotees and treats them differently. And Uttamadhikari, by that definition, is the one who not only recognizes the deity in the temple, but also does not distinguish between people and sees the Paramatma in everyone and tries to help them. So that's one definition. So I should say second definition. Third definition was given by Lord Chaitanya, who said, Kanishta Adhikari is one who chants Krishna's name just once in his life. Even if someone has chanted Krishna's name only once in his life, it's Kanishta Adhikari. The one who's constantly chanting the name of Krishna is Madhyamuddhikari. And the one by seeing whom you start chanting Hare Krishna is Uttamadhikari. So by seeing an Uttamadhikari, we start chanting. Okay, so that's another. So there are various ways to categorize. They ultimately all come down to the same thing, but they are defined differently in different places. So thank you, Radha Bhakti, for bringing it up.
Prabhuji, I have, yeah, so we have two categories of, the preaching comes, as you mentioned just a few minutes back. So we have Bhajananandi and Goshtyanandi, right?
So, okay, that's another category.
Another category.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, go ahead. So the Goshtyanandi, Bhajananandi, they preach, but Goshtyanandi, they don't do it, right?
Bhajananandi don't preach.
They don't preach, yes.
They just sit in a corner and chant.
So they may be Madhyamuddhikari or they may be Uttamadhikari, right?
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay, we can't.
Like, I mean, it's individual, right? We can't make a general statement.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then I'll stop sharing. I'll come back to this file again. Yeah, I'll come back to that. Okay. So I hope that was clear, because I'm going to skip a few paragraphs and we'll go to oh, sorry, before I go further. So we talked about neophytes having weak faith. They have faith, some faith, but it's weak. So we talked about strong faith, kind of medium level faith, and weak faith. What about those without faith? They have no faith that their goal in life is to serve Krishna, right? So we can go to third paragraph on page 30. Sorry? Okay, so you see further classification of the Neophyte devotees made in the Bhagavad-Gita. You see that?
Yes,
I can.
Page 30, yeah. Okay, so basically in this, Rupa Goswami is talking about chapter 7, Bhagavad-Gita, text 16, which describes the 4 types of pious people who are all considered neophyte devotees. Why? Why are they considered neophyte devotees? Because they have some selfish interest. And I'll elaborate on that in a second. They're not going to Krishna for the sole purpose of satisfying or pleasing Krishna. They're looking for something for themselves, for their own pleasure. And therefore, they're not pure devotees. Okay, because pure devotees is free from all personal desires. Okay, so let me share this again. And okay, this should look very familiar to most of you. Oh, sorry. Okay. Would somebody like to chant this verse?
I can read, Prabhu.
Okay, go ahead.
Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna artho jigyasu artharthi jnani cha bharata rishabha. O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute, Jnani, who realize the greatness of God. They are all neophytes, but can be elevated to the second class or first class platform if they associate with pure devotees.
Right, exactly. Right, so Then we move to the last paragraph of page 30. It's talking about the same 4 categories, but now it's talking about specific examples of those who are in those 4 categories. So again, who remembers the 4 categories without looking at the screen? The first one was arth. What's arth? Distressed, right? Second was artharthi, one who's looking for some money, economic improvement, right? Third was jigyasu, right? Inquisitive. And fourth was Jnani, the wise person, right? So in this paragraph, Rupa Goswami is giving examples. So what category would you put Dhruv Maharaj in? Which of the 4 categories?
Artharthi.
Yes, good. The Kumaras, the 4 Kumaras.
Jnani.
Jnani, yes. Gajendra.
Distress.
Distress, much distress. And the sages of Namisharanya. Inquisitive, yes. So clearly they were all exalted souls. But they did not possess the minimum eligibility for pure devotional service because they are approaching the Lord for their pleasure, their self-interest, not to please the Lord. Right? Is that clear to everybody? I mean, you know enough about these 4 examples that you know what happened, what the pastime was. Right? So any doubts about that? What is the statement I just made? Okay. So, however, later on, all these 4 personalities or groups of personalities became pure devotees after they associated with the pure devotees or had direct contact with the Lord. So the sages of the Naimisharanya, their association with whom? Suta Goswami, pure devotee. So they became pure devotee. Gajendra, whose association did he have?
Lord Vishnu.
Lord directly, direct Lord. Yes. What about Kumaras?
Lord Vishnu.
And
the two doorkeepers, Jay and Vijay Narad.
And Brahma. Yes. So they had multiple. And so eventually they came around, right? And who did I miss? Dhruv Maharaj. Narad Muni, exactly right. Right? So they all became pure devotees after their association with either the pure devotee of the Lord or the Lord himself. Now, one point that I want to make is that although these 4 types of pious personalities, at least to begin with, did not qualify to practice pure devotional service, yet they are meritorious. They're very meritorious, and they're accepted as broad-minded Mahatmas because they approach Krishna. They didn't go to somebody else. If you remember the story of Gajendra, all these demigods were circling in the sky, looking at the Gajendra saying, is he going to ask me for help? But he ignored them completely and called for the Lord. Right? Everybody remembers that pastime? Right? So the point that is being made on page 31, 3rd line, 1st paragraph, is that without becoming pious, no one can come to devotional service. And if you look at the 4th line, it's basically Bhagavad-Gita 7.28. It says, only one who has continually executed. Can you see that? Can you see that in the 1st paragraph? Okay. So anyway, so only one who has continually executed pious activities and whose sinful reactions in life have completely stopped can take to Krishna consciousness, others cannot. So what's that verse in Bhagavad Gita 7.28? Anybody remember that by any chance? Ye sham tadagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandu moh vinurmukta bhajate mam dradavata. So that's basically what Krishna is saying here. Okay, it's being, sorry, Rupa Goswami is repeating here. And then 2 lines later it says, without pious activities, a distressed man can become agnostic or a communist or something like that. because he does not firmly believe in God. He thinks that he can adjust his distress condition by totally disbelieving in him. You saw that line, the last line in the first paragraph? Is everybody with me here? No?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so if you go back to the first paragraph that starts with these 4 types of devotees, if you go to the last line, it says, without pious activities. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. So without pious activities, if a man is in a distressed condition, he becomes an agnostic, a communist, or something like that, because he does not firmly believe in God. He thinks that he can adjust this condition, but totally disbelieving in him. In other words, a person doesn't believe in Krishna. He says, I can do it on my own. Whatever it is, I can solve it. Right? Or they simply just become agnostic. He may be there, maybe not be there. Who knows? Or sometimes they become communist countries. They are godless countries. Right? So any of this can happen if their sinful actions have not stopped yet, which is basically what 728 in Bhagavad-Gita says. So I'm going to pause because I think I may have left you confused. Any questions for clarifications?
Prabhuji,
Huh.
Russia being communist, but there are a lot of ISKCON devotees there.
Yes, that's thanks to Prabhupada.
And Guru Maharaj.
And Guru Maharaj, of course. His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Okay, any other questions or comments? So this is again very important point. Not everybody becomes a devotee. Okay.
Just maybe this is a silly question, Dad, but the sages of Naimisharanya, how were they inquisitive and not seekers of the absolute truth?
Yeah, very good question. So the number of questions they asked, the reason they had gotten together was that they had all these questions about Kali Yuga, about dharma, about what's going to happen later on and on and on. So they just kept asking questions, and Shaunak Rishi was representing them. So that's why they consider in the category of inquisitive. They didn't have a lot of knowledge. They were not jnanis. They were not an expert on the scriptures. But they were like-minded and they were devotional-minded. So they were asking the right questions from the right source. They found a pure devotee to ask the questions.
Okay, so I'm sorry, this is a bit of a basic question. The difference between inquisitive and seekers of the absolute truth is what exactly? Because what inquisitive is just wanting to understand what else is out there, and seekers of the absolute truth already believe in God. Maybe I'm just
sorry. So maybe I'm sorry, Radha Bhakti. Maybe I misunderstood the question. I thought you were asking the difference between inquisitive and jnani. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Inquisitive and seekers of the absolute truth. And
no,
why
I think they're basically the same. They're basically the same. The only thing is that in the context that we are talking about, the orientation is towards Krishna and devotional service, which in either case, orientation can be something different. But as long as the orientation is towards Krishna and service to Krishna, they're basically the same. Sorry, I misunderstood your question first.
Jeff, thank you.
So, Prabhu, one person can have a couple of different qualities together also, right? Like a jnani can be artharthi or something like that.
No, so a real jnani will not be artharthi.
Okay. No, I just give an example, but can a person have a couple of these 4 qualities together?
Maybe. I mean, like, again, unless we have a specific example, it's hard to think. Theoretically, yeah, it's possible. But generally speaking, if we're talking about jnanis, no. But a distressed person can also be artharthi. Maybe his distress is from lack of money. So that's possible.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
Prabhu, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Prabhu, if one hasn't done any pious deeds or something good, then can he still get a devotee association?
Very good question. So there's something called causeless mercy by the Lord and by the lost devotees. And that can always happen. And that can give somebody with no sukritis the association of the pure devotees. And we have some examples. For example, the story of Pingala, a prostitute in Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no record of any sukriti on her part. So that's one example. It's possible. It's not necessarily very likely, but it's possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Prabhu, I have a question. Prabhuji, what about those who practice bhakti, not Krishna bhakti, in general bhakti? And sometimes they just do it to, for the sake of rituals, or they do it because, and like, how do I say? See, I mean, like somebody have interest in Sanskrit, they just pick things up, do things, even though they are not doing it in that mood, that they want to attain some kind of, Kanishta-adhikari position or Uttama-adhikari position. What happened to those?
So again, remember, we're talking about devotees of Krishna as the devotees. Others are non-devotees. So people who do not worship Krishna, we're not considering them devotees. So the demigod devotees, ghost devotees, all sorts of other devotees, we're not considering them devotees. Okay? Is that more confusing or less confusing?
No, less. It is definitely less confusing, but I'm also thinking, like, it's like, I take the example of my parents. Like they don't believe in Krishna, but they do different kind of bhakti. They're still doing something. I'm just thinking along that line. I'm like, will they get something, or there's no hope?
Well, no. So let's take a specific example. So let's say somebody's serving, I don't know, Indra or Surya, some demigod like that, or somebody's serving a ghost or a hero worshipper, like a political star or a sports star. There's all sorts of people doing all sorts of worship. And what we're saying is that this waste of time is useless because it doesn't give them the ultimate goal of life. And the criteria we're making is the ultimate goal of life, which is obtaining love of Krishna. Everything else, according to Bhagavatam, is useless labor. So I think that's what I'm trying to say, but I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can I suggest something here?
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, but if suppose somebody is seriously praying to Hanumanji, so Hanumanji will say, okay, this devotee is sincere, so he takes that person to his master, to Lord Ram, right?
Well, so again, it depends. You have to be very careful. If somebody is worshipping Hanumanji as a servant, a devotee of Lord Ram, perfect. Yes, all the good things will happen. But now he's serving a devotee. Same thing with Lord Shiva. If somebody is worshipping Lord Shiva as a devotee of Krishna, all good things will happen because serving a pure devotee. But the problem comes when the devotee starts saying, no, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're all in all. You're the creator. You're the maintainer. You're the destroyer. You are everything. You're higher than Krishna and everybody else. That's where the problem comes.
Okay. So whoever is praying to the demigods, they should have the mood that please take me to Krishna because I don't have the capacity.
No, so once again, other than Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, demigods cannot take you to Krishna. They're not pure devotees. Okay, so let's be careful. Lord
Okay,
Shiva, Lord Brahma are very special. So they're exceptions.
Right. Okay. So what about Ganeshji? Because Brahma Samhita says that Ganeshji, Brahma Samhita text 50, I think it said, Yat Pada Pallavi Kumbha.
But what does it say? Vigna Vihanta, right?
Yes.
He destroys the vignas.
Yes.
He's not holding your hand and taking you to Krishna.
Oh.
Right?
So
But he
if
does
the-
destroy any obstacles. He's an expansion of Lord Nrsimhadev. So again, he's very special. Again, a special devotee, a special demigod. But yet, people get very mixed up because it says he's the first one you should worship, but first one to worship when you're worshiping demigods, not the first one to worship when you're worshiping Krishna. Okay? So let's not mix things up, otherwise we'll get very confused. You can approach Krishna through your spiritual master. You don't need any other approach. Okay? To keep life simple.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I was listening to a video of Prashant Mukund Prabhu, and he was mentioning the same thing. Let's say if someone is worshipping like Durga ji or Ganesh ji or Shiv ji. So he was giving, and he and other leaders also, they were giving some references to scriptures that, let's say if someone starts worshipping Suryadev or Surya Narayan, they're basically worshipping a demigod, but because they are getting Sukriti, because of worshipping a demigod, a divine personality, in their next lives, they'll probably get a chance to worship, let's say, a higher demigod. And similarly, with time and more lives, they'll get chance to serve like Ganpati ji, then Durga ji, then Shiv ji, and then from Shiv ji or Hanuman ji, they can get a chance to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But actually, in human form of life, it all starts with the demigod worship. Like you go up and up as you get more pious in your activities.
So Prabhu, hold up for 2 minutes because I'm coming to that point. And I think there's still some confusion in what you're saying. So hopefully that'll be clarified in the next couple of minutes. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, all right. Then let's move on. Because bhakti is causeless and independent, and that doesn't need anything, it cannot be a result of ritualistic pious deeds. So here in this verse, when they use the word piety or pious, it refers to previous devotional activity, which done knowingly or unknowingly awakens our attraction to Krishna. This is why Prabhupada specifically equates lack of piety with lack of firm belief in God. Okay, and I'm going to explain that even further. But that's the first point I wanted to make, that here when they say pious, they do not mean pious as in charity or worshipping demigods or performing 5 sacrifices. This is some way of serving devotees. And again, I'll elaborate a lot more. Sukriti means devotional credits. Although sometimes the word is used pious credits, but it's very confusing. It's devotional credits that you get only from serving a devotee. Okay, so hold off again. I'll explain it even further. Not I, Rupa Goswami will explain this further in the next few paragraphs. Okay, so in the next paragraph, Rupa Goswami is saying that of all the 4 categories of people described in this verse 716, the wise man is very dear to Krishna. Why? Because his inclination to approach Krishna is not material, bodily benefit. The wise man or the jnani is not coming for money. It's not coming to relieve their distress. It's not coming to ask questions. Rather, more or less, it's love. Not fully, but more or less. So also because he has received wisdom from studying the scriptures, he already understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Others may or may not. Okay. Now, further talking about that, we move to first paragraph on page 32. Okay. Without being elevated to the position of a jnani. Okay. So basically saying that the jnani is on a spiritual platform already. Whereas the other three, the arth, jigyasu and artharthi, are on material platform. So those three on the material platform find it hard to stick to the principle of worshipping Krishna. So let's read the first paragraph. I need a volunteer. Without being elevated.
I can read, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
Without being elevated to the position of jnani or wise man, one cannot stick to the principle of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The less intelligent are those whose intelligence has been taken away by the spell of Maya, are attached to different demigods on account of the influence of the modes of nature. The wise man is he who has thoroughly understood that he is a spirit soul and not simply the body, because he realizes that he is a spirit and Krishna is a supreme spirit. He knows that his intimate relationship should be with the Krishna, not with his body. The distress and the man in want of money are in the material concept of life, because distress and need of money are both in relationship with his body. One who is inquisitive may be a little above the distress and the man in need of money, but still he is on the material platform. But a wise man who seeks Krishna knows perfectly well that he is a spirit soul or Brahman, and that Krishna is the supreme spirit soul or Parabrahman. He knows that the spirit soul, being subordinate and finite, should always dovetail himself with the infinite and supreme soul, Krishna. That is the relationship of the wise man with the Krishna.
Right. So again, the point is being made is that those who are running to demigods, etc., are still on material platform. Those who are looking for money or relief from distress is still on material platform. Even the inquisitive are a little bit on the material platform, but the jnani is on a different platform, spiritual platform. Okay, so that's the main distinction being made. That's why Krishna says the jnanis are among the four. The jnanis are more dear to me, although still not pure devotees. Okay, the jnani understands his soul, not the body, and therefore the relationship with Krishna is on the soul level, not the body level. And because it's at the soul level, it's not looking for anything material. Okay, so is that part clear? Okay, all right. Next paragraph basically is a translation of another verse from Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 18, text 54. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labdeva. So basically it's describing the Brahma-bhuta platform, which is liberation from the bodily concept. And it is saying that one must get to Brahma-bhuta platform before one can advance to pure devotional service. Because only on the Brahma-bhuta platform, one gets the deep realization that the objective of life is to satisfy Krishna, not the bodily demands. So is that part clear? It's very important. Unless you are on Brahma-bhuta platform, which means unless you're liberated from the bodily concept, we'll keep asking for things that are good for the body. It's only when we are liberated for the bodily concept, which is Brahma-bhuta platform, that we realize we are the spirit soul and our relationship with Krishna is at the soul level. The soul's role is to serve Krishna, to please Krishna. Therefore, the Brahma-bhuta platform person is only looking for ways to serve Krishna, to satisfy Krishna. Okay, so therefore, one may think that liberation is a desirable asset. However, we should understand that liberation comes automatically to a devotee as a byproduct of bhakti. There's no need to separately endeavor for it. But it gets more complicated in a minute, but I want to make sure you understand this part, that Brahmavita platform is liberated from bodily concept on a soul level and therefore understands the relationship between the soul and Krishna, and therefore the mood is to serve Krishna for the pleasure of Krishna, not try to serve the body. Is that clear? And to a bhakta, to a devotee, that comes automatically. There's no separate endeavor required. Okay? Now, in the third paragraph of page 32, the Bhagavad is explaining that both the desire for material enjoyment and becoming one with the Lord are material. And therefore, they cannot give the same degree of pleasure as the devotional service does. And again, we discussed that 2 weeks ago. But the third paragraph will describe this, explain this even better. So somebody wants to read that? This is the last paragraph. Go ahead, please.
As stated before, there are three kinds of happiness: material, spiritual, and devotional. Devotional service and the happiness due to its execution are not possible as long as one is materially affected. If someone has a desire for material enjoyment or for becoming one with the Supreme, these are both considered material concepts. Because the impersonalist cannot appreciate the spiritual happiness of association and the exchange of loving affairs with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their ultimate goal is to become one with the Lord. This concept is simply an extension of the material idea. In the material world, everyone is trying to be the topmost headman among all his fellow men or neighbors. Either communally, socially, or nationally, everyone is competing to be greater than all others in the material concept of life. This greatness can be extended to the unlimited, so that one actually wants to become one with the greatest of all, the Supreme Lord. This is also a material concept, although maybe a little more advanced.
Right. So the whole paragraph basically proving the point that those who are looking for material benefits are, of course, on the material platform, but even those who are trying to become one with the Lord are basically doing that to become the master, to become greater than anybody else, because they understand the Lord is the greatest, and therefore if they become the Lord, they become the greatest. So again, a material concept, try to satisfy their own ego. There's nothing there for Krishna, and therefore the happiness that they get from merging in the body of Krishna is nothing compared to the happiness you get from performing devotional service for the pleasure of Krishna. Okay, is that clear? Now, oh, sorry, any question? Okay, so next paragraph on page 33, which is the first paragraph, the very third line, it says, one must know, can you see that? Third line towards the end. One must know. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. So one must know that he's finite and the Lord is infinite. Thus, it is not possible to actually become one with the Lord, even if one aspires for this. It's simply not possible, because finite can never become infinite. Therefore, anyone who has the desire or any desire or aspiration for satisfying his own senses by becoming more and more important, either in the material sense or in the spiritual sense, cannot actually relish the sweet taste of devotional service. Right? So somebody's humming. So can you please mute yourself? Thank you. So the taste, the sweet taste of devotional service will not be there if there's anything material involved, material sense gratification or anything like that. Okay. including the merging or becoming one with the Lord. Not only it's not possible, when you're trying it, it won't be the same pleasure. So therefore, Rupa Goswami makes it very, very clear that a pure devotee must be free from desire for liberation, which is mukti, and sense gratification, which is bhakti, because both will put him in trouble. As a matter of fact, Rupa Goswami compares these desires for mukti and bhakti with ghosts and witches, because they haunt one like ghosts. This desire for liberation or sense enjoyment haunt a person like ghost. And as long as these witches remain within the heart, there's no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service, which is the last line in this paragraph. Now, just to explain it further, a haunted person is not free to act as he likes. Actually, the haunted person is forced to fulfill the desires of the ghost or the witch who has possessed him. Similarly, one who is haunted by the desires for bhakti and mukti cannot act on the platform of bhakti. So bhakti and mukti do not go with bhakti. Instead, the ghost of bhakti and mukti force him to spend all their energy in pursuit of sense gratification or liberation. So therefore, the desire for liberation actually becomes a very severe impediment to pure devotional service, and it's even greater desire than the desire for sense gratification. Sorry, I didn't say it right. The desire for liberation is a bigger impediment in the performance of pure devotional service than the desire for sense gratification. Why? Because a person looking for liberation in the process of becoming detached from names, forms, qualities, activities of the material world can inadvertently develop aversion to all these varieties, including the transcendental names, form, qualities, and activities of Krishna. Therefore, the desire for mukti is actually diametrically opposite to pure devotional service. In other words, a person desiring liberation, and by liberation I'm talking about merging in the Brahman effulgence, cannot be a bhakta. And this is why Lord Chaitanya always said, do not associate with these people. Okay? And that is coming from this statement that the desire for mukti is diametrically opposite to pure devotional service, coming from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Actually, I'm going to share the screen. I think I have it there. Madhya chapter 19. Let me see if I have the on the screen. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Bhukti mukti spriha yavat pishachi hridi vartate tavad bhakti sukhasyatra katham abhyudayo bhavet. The material desire to enjoy the material world and the desire to become liberated from the material bondage are considered to be two witches, and they haunt one like ghosts. As long as these witches remain within the heart, how can one feel transcendental bliss? As long as these two witches remain in the heart, there's no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service, which is the point I was trying to make. It's making very clear, if we have the desire for liberation, of sense gratification, we cannot enjoy devotional service. And that's the reason why we have no taste for chanting, we have no taste for serving, and all those kind of things. Because we have so many desires, material desires. Okay, so is that clear? Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I answered you. I said, yes, it's clear.
Okay, thank you. All
Prabhu,
right.
I have a
Quick question
question.
then.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Prabhu, I have a question. So
Go
you
ahead,
said
please. Please go
these
ahead.
are two witches, Bhukti and Mukti, Prabhu. So my question is, when you are at the stage of pure devotional service, Prabhu, is it not so automatic that you get rid of that desire, even if it's there?
Well, get rid of it, it's not there anymore, right? So I'm missing your point.
So because we are moving towards the pure devotional service, so whatever desires that we have that are affecting our pure devotional service, when we reach at that point, Prabhu, are we not getting rid of those?
Yeah,
All the
that's what I'm saying.
impurities that
So
we have.
you got rid of it, it's not there anymore, right?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As a matter of fact, there's a wonderful verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapter 2, text 7. And it goes something like, Vasudeve Bhagavate Bhakti Prayojita Ajanyati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahatukam. As we become more and more attached to Krishna, as we perform more and more devotional service, automatically we become more renounced and we develop the knowledge. So that renounced is the getting rid of the material desires and the attachment to material things. Yeah, so same thing.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Okay. So now, in the second paragraph on page 33, is Srila Goswami is highlighting the fact that a devotee staunchly rejects any desire for bhakti and mukti. And that's the way he becomes even more attached to Krishna. So let's read next paragraph and you'll see Shikshashtakam verse number 4. Somebody wants to volunteer to read?
Can I read, Prabhu?
Please, of course.
The pure devotee never cares for liberation. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. A pure devotee never cares for liberation. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prayed to Krishna, "My dear son of Nanda, I do not want any material happiness in the shape of many followers, nor immense opulence in wealth, nor any beautiful wife, nor do I want cessation from material existence. I may take birth many times, one after another, but what I pray for you is that my devotion unto you may always remain unflinching."
Right. So does anybody know or remember the Shikshashtakam verse number 4?
Yes, Prabhuji. Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagdish kambya. Mam janmani janmana bhaktam bhakti atuke tvai.
Right. So this is literal translation. That was what Nana just read. Okay. All right. Let's go to the third paragraph. Volunteer to read?
Shall I read, Prabhuji?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
The attention of a pure devotee is so much attracted to glorification of the Lord's pastimes, name, qualities, forms, etc., that the devotee does not care for mukti. Srila Bilva Mangal Thakur has said, "If I am engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily can I perceive your presence everywhere. And as far as liberation is concerned, I think liberation stands at my door with the folded hands, waiting to serve me. To pure devotee, therefore, liberation and spiritual emancipation are not very important things."
Right. And I love this. So again, Rupa Goswami is saying that the pure devotee is so attracted to the glorification of the Lord, the features of the Lord, the pastimes of the Lord, the names of the Lord, qualities of the Lord, that he has no time, no attention, no attraction, no care for mukti. And then he quotes Bil Mangal Thakur, who says, I can see your presence everywhere because I'm so attached to you, and the liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me, and I don't care for it. How beautiful is that? This Bil Mangal Thakur, wonderful, pure devotee. Okay. So any questions? All right. The rest of the chapter, beginning from the first paragraph on page 34, basically gives many evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam regarding devotees whose heart is always full with transcendental bliss because of his attraction to the lotus feet of the Lord. And therefore, they naturally never aspire for liberation or for self-gratification. The liberation is important to impersonalists, but has zero importance for pure devotees. Similarly, all this, the four purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, the religiosity, the economic gains, material desires, and liberation, they mean nothing for a pure devotee. Any happiness from any of these four purusharthas are meaningless to them. They never aspire for them. They don't even desire the other four types of liberation. What are the other four types of liberation? Anybody knows?
Samyapya, Salokya, Sarasti, and Sarupya.
No, Sarupya, Samyapya, Sarasti, and
Sayujya.
No.
Salokya.
Yes. So Salok means same planet. Samip means with, near him. Sarsti means same opulence. And what did I forget?
Sarasti.
No, Sarsti same opulence. Or Sarupya, same form.
Yeah, same form.
So a pure devotee doesn't care for any of this. But Krishna says, no, I'll give it to you. You come with me, I'll give it to you. So he says, fine, but I don't want it. I don't care. You give me or not give me. As a matter of fact, I don't even care if you take me. And that's what the fourth Sishthashtakam verse that Prabhu just read, or chanted, I should say, is saying, Mam janmani janmanishware bhavatad bhaktir ahatiki tvai. Lord Chaitanya is saying, let me birth after birth come to this material world. All I'm asking for is your pure, unadulterated bhakti, devotional service. So that's the desire of a pure devotee, not, give me liberation of any kind. Right? I mean, we have other examples, not quite the same way, but along the same lines. If you recall, Lord Nrsimhadev was asking Prahlad Maharaj, asked for benediction. And what did Prahlad Maharaj say? Don't make me a merchant. I'm not a businessman. I don't want to do business with you. I don't want anything. And the Lord was insisting, no, please take it. I was saying, no, I don't want anything. Right? So pure devotee doesn't want anything except the opportunity to serve him or the devotee of him. So finally, Brahma said, okay, fine. If you want to give me, please give me constant association of your devotees, like Narad Muni, so I may serve them. Same thing happened with Dhruv Maharaj. Although he started as Artharthi, once he saw the Lord said, okay, ask me for any benediction. He didn't say, yeah, I want the kingdom of Brahma. He said, no. What I started off with my original desire was, it's like broken pieces of glass. But your darshan has given me the touchstone. Why do I want to do anything with these broken pieces of glass? This is what I'm saying, that's the mood of a pure devotee. Doesn't want dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Doesn't want any material gains. Doesn't want any kind of liberation. All he wants is to serve the Lord and lost devotees. All he wants to do is please Krishna. Anything and everything he does, the first question asked is this going to please Krishna? If yes, let me do it. If not, I don't want to do it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And that's why Srimad Bhagavatam, again, first canto, second chapter, says, Nat padyet yadiratim shameva kevalam. If anything we do, including even listening to Srimad Bhagavatam or listening about Krishna, if it's not producing love of Krishna, this useless labor. So the ultimate goal of life is to develop love for Krishna in our heart. And whatever we do has to be with that purpose, otherwise don't do it. And that is why the fundamental component of the definition of sadhana bhakti is that it must lead to love for Krishna. Otherwise, it's not sadhana bhakti. Now, going back to the question was being asked, what happens when we serve the demigods and all that? It's not leading to love of Krishna, therefore it's not recommended. Even Krishna says, Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 9, he says, Yepi anya devata bhakta yajanti shraddhayanvita tepi mameva kaunteya yajanti avidhipurvakam. Even the worshippers of demigod are actually worshipping me, but they're doing it in a way that is not recommended, that's not prescribed. So he's condemning it. Krishna condemns multiple times the demigod worship. Yes, it's true that anything done in the mode of goodness results in some purification. But that purification won't necessarily lead to bhakti. And that is why, again, going back to the point I was making, Sukriti is not pious credit, it's devotional credit. It results only from somehow or the other having served a devotee. And I think a few weeks ago, I gave the example of somebody planting a mango tree in India somewhere and coming back to Canada, not even realizing the tree has grown up and is giving mangoes. And a devotee one day goes there in the month of June when it's very hot, sits down on the shade of the tree, looks up, sees this ripe mangoes, plucks a few, eats them, goes on his way. This person sitting in Canada never finds out, but he gets the devotional credit. That devotional credit results in faith. That faith results in the devotee association. That results in bhajan kriya, the performance of devotional service, which results in artha nivritti, the loss of all the anarthas, like lust, greed, anger, etc., which then firms up your faith, and you take it from there. Okay, so I want to come back to that question that no, serving the demigods is not going to lead you to pure bhakti. Okay, again, the exceptions are Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and to some small degree, Lord Ganesh, in the sense that he removes the obstacles, just like Lord Nrsimhadev does, because he's a partial expansion of Lord Nrsimhadev. And that's the verse 50 that Pada was referring to from Brahma Samhita. Vignan vihantum alamas jagatriyas. Right? So it's in that reference, not in reference of giving you pure devotional service. Only the Lord and the Lord's pure devotees can do that. Questions, comments?
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I'm talking about personally about myself. We started with demigod worship when we were small, and that's how we saw everybody worshiping in the family and relatives and everybody. And today we are trying to serve Krishna. So how did we get here? Was it due to Agyat Sukruti, or was it due to our past, in one of our lives we would have done some devotional service that stopped and we are here today? Or is it because we got association, unknowingly we got association from a pure devotee? What could be the reason that today we are trying to serve Krishna?
Well, so a number of reasons you gave are valid reasons. Your Agyat Sukriti, devotional credit, you're serving any devotees, directly or indirectly, you're getting devotee association by the mercy of a devotee or by the mercy of Lord, any of those things. Right? Somebody gave you a book, that's your devotee association, and then you associate it with Bhagavad-Gita, which is non-different from Krishna. So it could be that. I mean, who knows?
But that has nothing to do with the demigod worship that we
Nothing
did.
to do with demigod worship. Demigod worship, the best it can do is increase your mode of goodness, and that's about it. So if you want to call that something to do with it, fine, but not directly. So for example, if somebody just kept worshiping demigods only, right? The best thing that will happen is that he'll become a demigod himself. Not a pure devotee. Actually, that's how the demigods become. They perform pious activities like fire sacrifice, worshipping of demigods, etc., for simple motivation of becoming a demigod, and they become demigod. They don't become pure devotees. Okay, and demigods themselves are not pure devotees. They're devotees, yes, but they're not pure devotees.
So then what is the role of a demigod in our life that we worship them?
Well, excuse me, in chapter 3, Krishna defined that. He said the demigods have been given the role by Krishna to manage the affairs of the universe. So like sun will give you heat and light. Fire will give you heat and light. Wind god will give you ability to breathe, and so on and so forth, right? And the idea is that we will give them a fee to the performance of fire sacrifices. And when we don't do that, demigods get angry and we get earthquakes and typhoons and hailstorms and so on and so forth. Tsunami. And now, Krishna says, Bhagavad-Gita, Yajna nam jap yajna asmi. Among all the sacrifices, I am the jap yajna. So because we are chanting the holy name of the Lord, we are performing many, many fire sacrifices on behalf of not just us, but many other people. And therefore, the world is surviving, and you can be proud of that. If everybody stops chanting one day, there will be disaster in the world, right? Because not enough people are performing fire sacrifices in the age of Kali, and those who are performing are not doing it properly. You know, contaminated grains, contaminated Brahmins, contaminated fire, and all those kind of things. I mean, sometimes I've seen the Brahmins use firewood. That's not firewood. It's plywood. And that's not pure wood. And that doesn't result in anything good. So my point is, in this time and age, even fire sacrifices are not happening. So thank God for those who chant holy name of the Lord. But for Hare Krishna Mahamantra, there will be way more disaster in this world than is happening. So those are some of the possible ways you got here, Prabhu. And then you got the mercy of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, and I'm sure some other devotees that brought you where you are.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, and that applies to all of us. Some of us, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Prabhu.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, when we talk about demigods, and even as a child and all, I don't think, I mean, not at least for me, if I remember that when we used to worship demigods when we were child, that time it was like just pray for whatever we want, right? That is how our upbringing is.
That's right.
Okay, I'm going to Ganeshji because I need Saraswati, I need Vidya, Lakshmi ji, we need. So that is how we have been.
That's right.
And I don't think that even we have asked Shivji also devotional service. When especially me, I every day I used to go to Shiv temple, but I never worshipped as a, give me the devotional service. I always worship to get some material benefit.
Correct. That's correct. That's the normal, right?
Yeah.
You go to Shivji because he's easily satisfied. He'll give you whatever you need, and we are only asking for material things.
So that's why I don't think that demigod worship will anyways, give us the bhakti anywhere, because we are worshipping them for the material desires.
Remember also in Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna said that yanti devrata devan madbhakta yanti mamapi, right? He said that those who worship demigods, their perfection is to go to the planet of the demigods. But my devotees come to my planet, right? I mean, he's tried to make it so clear, so many ways, right? So if we read chapter 7, there should be no confusion left in our life about demigod worship. He's condemned it so badly. So many verses. Antamantu phalam tesham tad bhavat alpamesha. Only the non-intelligent, jinke dimag mein gobar bhara hai, they worship demigods. Right? So, I mean, what more can we ask for? It's very, very clear. Yeah, it's true that most of us, fortunately not me, but most of us grew up worshipping demigods because our parents, our grandparents, that's what they did. And that's what they taught us. But that doesn't change the fact Especially now that we had the good fortune of becoming at least an aspiring devotee. Let's stick to it and let's try to make progress. Does it make sense? Or am I forcing my views on you?
It was wonderful, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, sorry, Mother. Can you start again, please?
Everybody tips. It's okay. It's okay. No, it's okay. That don't put on that sense. It's okay. Just leave it.
Okay, any other questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Usha Mataji, how are you?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. So, Prabhuji, demigods like Surya Dev and fire, wind, these are the demigods. How about Ganesha? How about Hanuman? Hanumanji was the biggest, devotee of Ram, or in other words, Krishna. So, what about Ganesh Bhagwan?
What about him? What's your question?
Is he also a demigod or?
Yes, he's a demigod. He's a devotee demigod, but he's a demigod. Same thing with Lord Hanumanji. Actually, I don't even consider him demigod. I consider him a pure devotee of Lord Ram.
Yeah.
So that's true. So you're right.
So we can worship him, right?
As long as you worship him as a devotee of the Lord, no problem. It's good. But the moment you start worshiping him as the almighty, all-powerful, that's wrong.
Yes. And he is also, I don't know, people say he's another form of Shiva.
Well, so he's a partial expansion of Shiva. There's a whole story behind that. So that's true. He's a partial expansion of Lord Shiva.
And as well as Rahu Ketu, those are the planets, right?
No, that's not true. He's not an expression of Rahu Ketu. That's absolutely untrue.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Sure. Anyone else? Okay, then I guess we are at the end of the class today. Again, I want to thank you very much. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhya evcha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure is all mine, Prabhu.
Let's share it.
Let's share it.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Isha. Okay, Hari Bol.